All right, guys, welcome back to another Unity tutorial. Today, what we are going to be going over is kind of just the last things that you need to be mindful of to wrap up our 2D side-scroller game and eventually building it out and having a .exe so that you can share it with people who want to try it and get feedback from other playtesters. So essentially what I'm going to be going over today are just a little bit of review and some level building or level design tips for you to keep in mind as you're designing your second level and just all the scenes that you need to have present in your game for the final build. So let's go ahead and start with the sample scene here, which is my first level. Essentially, just what I did is I made the level a little bit more interesting, made it longer, and kind of what I'm trying to do is introduce the player to the mechanics of the game. Essentially, that's the goal of any first level of a 2D platformer. So I'm going to go ahead and click play. So essentially what we have here is we just have, an opportunity for players to jump and, understand that, oh, I can, there should be a way for me to get up to this platform. Sure enough, there's a jumping mechanic. There's what appears to be an enemy that I can jump on and damage. And there's, ramps that I can travel up and get across to these different areas and plateaus. It's just all to introduce the player to the mechanics of your game, and then as the level progresses, you introduce a little bit more of a challenge for them until eventually ending at the the goal of your level, which for me is this little flag, and I'm not going to make it. But regardless, anyways. Oh, and I need to fix my death zone, apparently. It's not stretching all the way out to there. Go ahead and fix that. There we go. But anyways, so there's a couple things that I want to go over with you guys to make your lives easier for designing the second level. So what we're going to go over is something called prefabs. Now prefabs, you'll notice I've already started to make some prefabs because these things in my scene are labeled as blue, which means they are prefabs. So what I've done is I created a folder inside of my assets folder called prefabs. And essentially what prefabs are instances of things that we already have in our scene so that we can reuse them and not have to worry about recreating that same, game object over and over and over again. So for example, I can create a prefab of our player and I don't have to worry about, bringing in the animations, reapplying, our capsule collider and our scripts and all that kind of stuff. I can just take our character, make it a prefab, and I can reuse it in any of my scenes that I want. So in order to make a prefab, all you have to do is grab one of the objects inside of your scene. So for example, in order for me to make a prefab of my player object, I just selected the object in my scene, click and drag into the folder that I want my prefabs to exist in. So because I already have a prefab, I'm getting this message of create a prefab or a variant. I'm just going to hit cancel because I don't need a variant of this. But that's how you're going to create a prefab. And then once you create new scenes, for example, like the level 2 scene that I created over here, all you have to then do is go into your prefabs folder and click and drag all of these elements into your scene. So to make things super easy, the things that I made prefabs were my enemies, the player, the background, and the grid. So what you can do is, as you bring in your grid, your prefab of your grid from your first level, you'll notice that it's laid out exactly the same as the previous level because it's a prefab. All you have to do is you can just go into that grid, go into tile palette, and you can erase, those elements in that grid and then redraw whatever you want for your second level. And then I did the same thing with the enemies. I just click and dragged the enemies into the scene, and I just had to create new waypoints, as you can see here. So each enemy has its own unique set of waypoints to dictate which direction it's going, and then you just have to make sure that those instances of those prefabs in your scene, for example, You just have to make sure you go to our enemy script and set those waypoints accordingly. And then you can do the same thing with the background. You can create a prefab of the background, click and drag it in, and then the only thing that you need to remember to do with that is go into each of the children of our background and make sure that you set the camera to the main camera of the scene. Very important. Don't forget to do that. And also make sure to bring over any settings that you have from your first level for your main camera over here. So like for me, I set the camera size to 8, and then we need to make sure we assign our camera follow script here. So next what I want to go over with you guys is some UI stuff and to make the process of switching scenes a little bit more simple. So if I go into my scenes tab here, I have a start screen that I have just brought in the background a little level here. I'll just hit play on this so you can see what it looks like. And this is our game in a plum apple with a start button, and I just have my character here just standing waiting to go. So when I brought in a TextMesh Pro object, it created a canvas, and you can see that I have my text, my UI for the start screen here. Anything that you apply to the canvas is going to get scaled down to the size of your main camera, so that's why it looks like this. So you can go into your game view and see what you have here and make adjustments accordingly. So for example, I can go to inside my canvas, go to my button, and if I want to make an adjustment, like, oh, let's say I want the button here, and then I can see how that will look in the game. I'm just going to go ahead and undo that. So one thing that I did to make the transition from different scenes a little bit easier is I created a new script called Scene Loader. And what this is going to allow you to do is just bring in the Scene Loader script into whatever button you want to use to transition to a scene. And once you assign it to the on click of the button, you just have to type in the name of the scene that you want it to switch to. So I'm going to go over to my scripts tab here. I named it Scene Loader, and we're going to open it right here. And as you can see, it's a very, very simple, straightforward script. It is just a new method that I called load scene, and it accepts an argument, or I should say it has a parameter of data type string with the name scene name. So what this is going to say is that, okay, this method is expecting a value that's going to be given the name of scene name. It's going to be a string, and whatever that value is, we are going to call scene manager, and we're going to load the scene of that specific scene name. So this parameter here, this variable scene name, gets populated by whatever we type in here. So I'm going to walk you through how to do this really quick, just as review. So I'm going to remove this from here. I've added the scene loader script to this game object, to this button. So for the on-click event, our list is currently empty. I'm going to hit plus. I'm going to grab our scene loader script and drag it into the object. And then where it says no function, I'm going to go down to scene loader because that's the name of the script that has the method that we want to use. And if I go down to load scene, that is the name of the method that I created, load scene. And you can see here next to load scene, it's expecting a value of a string data type. So I'm going to select that method, and in this text field, I'm going to type in the scene I want it to load. So for me, that's going to be sample scene because I haven't renamed the first scene to level 1. I've just left it as sample scene. So now, for any of your UI elements, you can take this button or any button that you make for your different screens that you'll need to allow the player to navigate. You can just bring in that script, assign it to the on-click function of the button, and then type in whatever scene you want it to load, and you'll be good to go. So let me go ahead and go over the different scenes that you need to have for your final submission. So I'm going to go to the scenes folder here, and you can see that I have the following scenes laid out. I have a start screen, I have a sample scene, which is my level 1. I have a level 2. I have a game over screen, and I have a win screen. So let's start with start screen. But before we do that, remember that whenever you create a new scene, you need to add the scene to your build settings. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to File, Build Settings, and you can see that I've added all of my scenes here that are part of my game. Now the thing to keep in mind is to add a scene, you want to have that specific scene open in your editor, and then once you open Build Settings, you'll see the option to add open scenes. The only thing that matters is for scene 0, you want to make sure that that is your start screen, because that is going to be the first scene that loads once we build our game and export it, to a .exe, which we'll go over in another video. But that's really all you need to worry about scene settings. Make sure you have all your scenes and that your start screen scene is in the spot of scene 0. You can click and drag scenes and rearrange them however you need them to be. So start screen is at scene 0. So once you have everything built, up and running, you'll submit your fully exported game, which is really exciting. And then you're also going to submit a video of yourself playing through your game. So we should see, you going through, starting at the start screen, playing, and making your way all the way through to the end of the game. And we'll see your victory screen or your game over screen, whatever happens in order for you to get to the end of your game. And that is all you need to do for your final submission. It's just having all of your UI elements done and then building a second level. And then just make sure that for your flags or whatever you have assigned as your goal, you have it transporting you appropriately to the next scene. So for example, what I did is in my sample scene, let's go to player. And again, another reminder, you can select a game object, hover over the scene window, press F, and it will zoom into that specific game object. So what I did, I should have just selected the flag, but oh well. I have this flag assigned as with the flag tag, and in my player's respawn script down here, player respawn, I have it set to load level 2 if the player collides with that game object. And then I have another if statement here checking to see if I've collided with something called end flag. And if I have collided with the end flag, I'll move to the win screen. As I'm sure you can tell, the end flag is the flag for the second level. So if I go to my scenes, load level 2, select on my flag here, you can see I've tagged it as end flag. And once end flag is touched, it will load my win screen, which just looks like this. And then I have a button here to restart the game if the player wants. So that is it. Just make sure that each of your screens, like your win screen, your end screen, and your start screen, have the buttons you need to navigate to the different scenes. So win screen has restart to restart the game. End screen, for example, has restart to start, from square one. So that's going to be it, guys. Good luck making your second levels. Remember to, kind of guide the player through your level, introducing, the mechanics as you go and ramping up the challenge, gradually as they are completing the level. Don't try to just throw them in a very complex and difficult scenario right out the gate. Gradually lead them into a more difficult scenario, allowing them to discover the mechanics of the game naturally.